motion is on pay, and the reason I'm up here is that Hector's moving it. Hector?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll be very, very quick about this motion. Mark covered some of the issues that we're facing on pay within the civil service as a whole. What this motion is seeking to do is very, very narrow and very specific. One of the things that HMRC is different to other departments, that pay progression is not accepted as a contractual right within HMRC, and that is not the case in other civil service departments. And I fight there the Home Office, but that's not the only department. So all this motion is seeking to do is basically to call upon the GEC to actually campaign so at least we get pay progression as a contractual right within our organisation, the same as the Home Office. So, I mean, even if we get, it's not going to solve all our problems of pay, but I think at least it gives us parity with other departments in the civil service, which are currently still getting pay progression and we're not. So I'll pause there.
Okay, so I want to second that.
Formally, yeah?
I'll second.
Anna will second it, lovely. Okay, anyone opposed to it? Okay, should we just move to the vote then? All in favour of moving this to the group conference? Against? Abstentions? Right, carry.
Okay, thanks very much, Joe.
Yep. Okay, thanks for that, Joe. Moving swiftly on, we've got quite a few motions on our agenda to get through. Motion number 2 is entitled Privatisation and HMRC Contact Centres, and Anna Owens is to move.
Okay, I'm going to try and do this in 2 minutes. Can people hear me? Because there's a little bit of feedback coming through at the moment.
I've cut the mic off.
Oh, you cut the mic off?
Yeah.
Okay then, so yeah, this speech is basically, well, the motion is part of the ongoing campaign that we're running right now to stop privatisation going on in the HMRC. Now recently, some of you may know, there are over 14,000 members within PTR took strike action over 2 private companies being brought into our contact centres in Lilyhull and Backgate. Now this action is part of a campaign to not only stop privatisation, but also to stop the closure of our RX, of our inquiry centres. Because fundamentally the plan is to shut down all the inquiry centres and move all the work into the contact centres. Now the 2 companies, Sitel and Teleperformance, they plan to bring in 200 staff for a year's trial, which is going to cost the department £4 million, and they're going to be being paid 3,000 less than the HMRC staff. Now what Nick Lodge states is that the reason the 2 companies are being brought in is to see if they can help improve the 80% success rate that we have with the 100 million calls that the HMRC receives every year. And I've no doubt that they're going to do this, and they're going to do this by a process of bullion, by fiddling the statistics, by sending as short as possible with every phone query. So what the PCS argument is that if the department wants to spend £4 million, recruit these individuals directly, cut out the middleman, recruit them, get them staffed and get them trained by professionals within the HMRC. Now, the problem that we're dealing with in terms of privatisation, I mean, Mark Sawaka touched on it before, is that David Cameron, his stated aim in the recent white paper on public services, where he calls for the end of the grip of state control, he argues for the privatisation of every public service, apart from the judiciary and the security services. And the white paper, I'd argue, represents everything that is wrong with this Tory government and why the majority of the people in this country didn't vote for him. Because privatisation has proved an absolute disaster in this country. Now, when Thatcher began her privatisation programme in the 1980s, it was mainly the trade unions that were arguing against it. But I think that you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone today that's got a positive word to say about privatised industries, such as transport, gas, water, and all the other state industries that she privatised. Now, she managed to, once she sold off those state assets, she managed to raise £46 billion from selling off 2/3 of the state's assets. And now what Cameron's trying to do is sell off the last third, the core services, the services that we absolutely depend on. And he wants them run by unelected businessmen without any interference or guidance from the state. Now Cameron, the main problem that man's got is that he's got absolutely no mandate for doing this. I mean, we've seen the mess that he's already in over the Tory healthcare bill and his attempts to privatise the NHS. He's in an absolute mess over this. And basically, I mean, we've seen these demonstrations up and down the country, you know, saving your local library, saving your local hospital. The anti-privatisation movement in this country is massive, and I think that we in the HMRC need to be involved in that. So next time PTOps take action over the privatisation of the contact centres, I think we need to start escalating this across the HMRC. And if the management, if the government don't break down, then fundamentally we need to extend that action to include a 5-day block of strike action, right, to stop this privatisation plan.
Okay. Sorry, so thanks for Anna. Anyone want to second the motion? I'm happy to say, okay, Andy. Motion open for debate. Anyone want to contribute?
Is this, would your proposal include strike action on top of the strike action that Mark's already hinted at?
That'll be slightly separate, right? Because I mean, what the union do is when you send in strike submissions to them, they've got this group called the National Disputes Committee, and they judge when it is the best time to take action. So when Mark was talking about pensions and the action that they want to take after the 28th, the action that we've taken so far, even though it's focused on pensions, it is actually including pay privatisation. So what we want to do, it's effectively a pincer movement. We want to attack this government on all levels. So the PCS will judge, you know, when's the best time for all this action to happen. So in a sense, all right, we're leaving it up to them to strategically organise it.
Right. So this wouldn't commit us to different strikes?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, they're trying to sort of complement it.
It'll be a unified campaign, it'll be integrated, yeah. Okay.
Any opposition to the motion?
Well, it's only the 5-day block. You're saying strategically that the union will decide when, but they're going to have to do it. It's a 5-day block.
That's not actually written in the motion as an instruction.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, as a ballot, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, happy to move to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? No, motion's carried, and I'm glad that motion was carried. Before we move to the next motion, just comment briefly on it. I was up in Lily Hall Contact Centre last Wednesday, actually. I was the guest speaker at their AGM, and as you can imagine, this was quite a hot issue. One of the things that struck me and quite appalled me, that the Sitel workers, the private sector workers, they worked in a particular segregated spur within Lily Hall, and they're not allowed any contact with the HMRC staff or vice versa. Completely separated. Even the union reps are not allowed to have any contact with the Sitel workers. Now, I challenged that. I've already raised this nationally. This is ridiculous. We can't be having this, and it's completely unacceptable. And the other thing that's quite interesting about Lily Hall, which again I'm taking up, is that we've got this AGM at the moment here, but we also have the opportunity during the year, if we need to as reps, to meet with members in your sections to talk about workplace issues. In contact centres like Lily Hall, it doesn't happen. The only chance that the reps have to meet with their members in Lily Hall face to face is at the AGM. Other than that, they've got to do email and Twitter and Facebook. That's how they communicate with their members in Lily Hall. Absolutely outrageous. And again, just taking that, I'm challenging it, and I said to them, I'll give a commitment that I'll sort that out. But I think it's important that you know this, to give an indication that things are difficult perhaps in Euston Tower, but spare a thought for some of the members, some of our colleagues that work in contact centres like Lily Hall, and some of the things that they're facing. All right, okay, I'll move on to the next motion, motion 3, privatisation in DMB, and Dave Plummer to move. Will you come up there?
Yeah. I think Anna might have been rehearsing a conference speech there. I think she said most of what needs to be said here, but I personally think PCS absolutely mucks up the campaign against privatisation in DMB with good reason. No, with good reason, because we were consulted as branches, and I had to report back to Hector and PCS that I didn't think action against privatisation in DMB would really be that well supported. And given that 2 DMB members turned up to our constituency meeting, I think I might have been quite right there. But basically, this is just calling on the privatisation disputes going on in the contact centres. We've already had it going on in DMB with these collecting agencies. We need to stop that, because we know it doesn't take genius to work out that DMB is going to be absolutely decimated, and the half dozen people left are going to be sold off. So it's a field force. If there's anyone on field force that doesn't think they're going to be privatised in the next couple of years, I think they're in Claire Quigley now, frankly. So this is basically calling on PCS in the group to get action going again, or to get action going in DMB. Yeah, because we didn't when we should have done. But now we've got the privatisation disputing the contact centres, there's a good opportunity to get involved in DMB as well. And so as our numbers drop, we're not getting replaced. The work's going to the DCAs, whose limits get gradually higher and higher and higher. The people we've got have been yanked off to local compliance, which I think is all going to have left in a couple of years. Yeah, so there you go.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Didn't slag me off too much. Okay. Anyone to second the motion? Okay. Len, motion open for debate. Any opposition to the motion? No? Okay, put it to the vote. All those in favour? Okay. All those against? Okay. Before I move on to the motion, just a quick comment. I'd recommend the PCS Euston branch website, pcseuston.org.uk. If you look on it, it's our branch website. If you look on it, you'll see a little article from myself on the issue of DCAs in debt management and banking. I would commend that article to you because it's quite interesting reading about the reality about what actually happened with regard to the DCAs in debt management and banking. Okay, I'll move on to motion number 4, opposition to SCP in SME compliance. Anna.
Yes. All right, now this particular motion touches me quite personally because I work in local compliance. I'm an AO. And I'm an assistant compliance officer, and I basically assist local compliance officers when they go out on their visits. Now, although this motion particularly relates to local compliance, because it also involves pay setter, some of you, though I may understand some of the issues that I'm going to raise in this. Now, what's happened in local compliance over the last few years is management have introduced all these lovely, beautiful new initiatives to improve our job and to try and make us work more efficiently. Now, the latest one we've got is called Single Compliance Processing, or SCP. Now, its stated aim is to relieve the compliance burden on business and their agents. In other words, what that means is that HMRC want us to do visits which are going to be shorter, so we don't burden the employer. And the belief is that if we do these shorter visits, but we also do more numerous visits, then we're going to collect more yield. But any bando that works in employer compliance, they'll tell you that it's when you actually sit down at that employer's, investigate their records, spend about 3-4 hours, that's when you really see the tax avoidance or the tax evasion that's actually going on. And that's where you start collecting all the money. Now, in Euston Tower, we've had 2 pilot exercises going on over SCP. And already the bandos are already complaining about increased stress levels, simply because of the time scale that's been given for each area of work, the way it's all itemised. And in one of the pilots, staff have been told now that they're expected to clear 50 cases a year. Now, an employer compliance bando, a single case could take you about 2 or 3 years. And now they're being expected, to clear, well, asked to see if they've got the ability to clear around 50 cases a year. Now, I'd argue that there is actually something more insidious going on within these trials and this whole way that the HMRC are trying to move us into. And what I want to do, I just want to quote a paragraph to you. You know the recent Public Accounts Committee where they were challenging Dave Hartnett over the fact that he allowed Vodafone off with $6 billion. Now, the Guardian newspaper, they did a report on it, and what they said was that the committee lamented HMRC's cosy relationship with large companies, but is silent on the coziness with the tax avoidance industry. It notes that HMRC officials attended numerous lunches, dinners and receptions organised by PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Deloitte Touche, Ernst & Young. Lavish hospitality is organised to promote private interests rather than enhance HMRC accountability. And I think it just sums up the hidden hand of these accountancy firms in terms of how we're supposed to operate within the HMRC, because the very accountants that spend their whole lives telling their clients how to avoid or evade tax, they are now basically instructing the HMRC about how we should perform. So PCS, we actually put a circular out recently, and we actually said we supported these trials, which I think is the wrong way for PCS to go in. So what this motion is calling for is for PCS to oppose the trials. And for us to basically maintain the current service we provide, and we defend the employer compliance visits.
Okay. Thank you, Anna.
There's seconder for the motion? Yeah? Okay, motion open for debate.
I wanted to say something. It's not just O's, Anna, it's HOs as well that do ITSA work. That would affect them, the same as it is for EC, it'd be the same for ITSA.
Yeah.
Do you see my point?
Yeah, it's only because I know about employer compliance, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you just put it like as EC, but it's ITSA as well, and perhaps CT.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what we could do, we could make perhaps a slight amendment just to incorporate that in the motion.
It'll make it stronger
Yeah.
for you, I think.
Okay.
Alright.
If you say EC, that's only part of the
Yeah,
time.
all right, no problem.
You see what I mean?
Okay, we'll try and come up with an amendment to cover that. Okay? Any opposition to the motion? No? Okay, all those in favour? Yeah. Any against? Alright, one against, okay, note that. One against. Okay, motion 5. Joe, come up, please.
Okay, everyone. This is motion 5, obviously being proposed by Hector again. Grading of staff in local compliance.
Okay, right. I'm going to be brief and try and touch on the point, the last point about being like, you know, covering one particular area. I mean, I recognise that pay and grading is an issue right across HMRC, but this motion is focused specifically on local compliance. And the reason why it is because certainly I've recognised the last few years that pay and grading become a bigger and bigger issue. Because one of the things I've noticed, when I first joined the old Inland Revenue in 1999, we did not have, for example, Band O's doing ITSA full inquiries. But they are now. They are now. I mean, I know Band O's, for example, are doing offshore disclosure cases. Like quite complicated work which traditionally, well, inserted a few years ago, would never been done by Band O's. So I think over the last few years, there's been a gradually pushing down to lower grades, more and more complex work. One of the things that struck me when I went on the internet to find, like, you know, the job profile, job descriptions, and it's at the most what it says is, if you're an O, you do compliance checks on employers and taxpayers. And if you're an HO, you deal with complex employers and taxpayers and businesses. And then if you're SO, you do highly complex. But we actually find a definition. What's the difference between a complex employer and a non-complex one? Can't find it. I can't find it. Somebody here might have maybe to beat on that. I can't find it. Or a highly complex employer. And what are the sorts of categories? So what this motion is seeking to do is basically say to the GEC, we need to actually get in contact. We need to start basically negotiating with the pay and grade. There still is a pay and grading team within the department whose main role is to make sure that people's work is graded appropriately. So if you're a Band O doing Band O casework, that is properly evaluated under the JEG system, which we've still got, the old JEG system, to make sure that work is properly graded, and similarly for the higher grade. So what I will say is this motion is specifically about local compliance, but I'm hoping that if the conference agrees it and the G takes it forward, it would recognise that there are potential parallels in other parts of the department. But I think there's a really, really big issue with local compliance in particular, which I think that needs to be addressed. That's the reason why the motion is focused mainly at this moment on local compliance. I'll pause there.
Okay, on second. Lovely. Anyone opposed? Right, okay.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think what you've done is set out an issue that's going to be much wider across the department than just local compliance. Yeah. I look in the adjudication, which is a kind of bit out on a limb, but because I face a complete that sort of issues happened in our office. And when we look at it in terms of possibilities of an analysis of what's appropriate to grades, I think the feeling we've always got is that it's likely that if that took place, it will be pushed down to serious danger in that fashion. So I guess my point really is that it has a wider application than just local compliance.
Yeah. I fully agree with that. Fully agree with that.
Okay, any other comments?
Is it true that we've got someone in this building who's an AA doing contract settlements?
I've heard that. I'd like to speak to that AA or AA or
They
those
weren't
AAs.
present earlier.
I'd really like to speak to them. I mean, certainly AA should not be doing casework.
But it's quite shocking, isn't it? I mean, contract settlements are usually HO work.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Steve.
Yeah, did
sorry.
they volunteer to do it though? That's what we need to find
No,
out.
the problem is they've been told that there's no other work. The problem is that the department's getting stuff done on the cheap. So what do you say, that you start recruiting AOs, give them what was formerly O and HO work, because they're scared that there's no other work for them. So this is operating on fear. They're worried that if they don't accept this work, well, what other work is going to be made available for them?
Can I quickly respond to that point? Very quickly before to take Len. Very quickly, 30 seconds. On the point about AAs, there was a reference to it in the motion. One of the things I've recognised, certainly within compliance and elsewhere in the department, the amount of AA work that's available is dropping like a stone.
But it's happening to AOs
Yeah. And what I've said, particularly about AA, there is an agreement already within HMRC that where there is lack of work for AAs, but there is potential work at AO, you could promote those AAs that have to go through the full sort of job trawl process. And that's part of what this motion is saying, because I recognise certainly AAs, a lot of them are getting a hard time with it. I mean, give one anecdote which is quite interesting. On the recent E&C trawls for HOs that was done, a number of AAs got promoted straight to HO. There's a couple of them. And they're doing casework. Obviously they're doing casework, that's why they put examples down to show that we're doing HO work. Because they were doing casework, that shouldn't be happening. And that happened. So that's the reason why there's a specific reference to AAs in the motion. So, sorry, I was going on.
Could it be amended to include other grades as well? Are you sure that the wording is okay? Because there's AOs who have also been put through the TPQ programme so that they can do O and HO inquiries. Now the trouble is that all started off voluntarily, but now they're actually under pressure. It's been taken for granted. And they weren't allowed, I understand this is also linked to the fact that none of them got through the recent trawls, which was significantly interesting because they were all from one section. So there's a bit of hypocrisy going on here, so I think you need to include AOs in this.
Okay.
All I was going to say, I mean, as Hector said, it's a wider issue. I'm in RIS. There is a severe problem with work coming through at AA, AO level and even O level, right? So people will do work beyond grade. It's got to be a wider issue. My concern is that I'd just like to raise is about, if it's long term, which it appears it could be, it's PDEs.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
We're going to move on. So Shanika and then...
Just a small point.
Go.
Welcoming the opportunity being given in that A for the A. What about the other long-term suffering AOs? We have been there 12, 13 years, other DMV, which why don't we get the opportunity as well to do those type of work and go to there? And I've been asking, go to the compliance. Nobody is letting us. So why don't we get the opportunity to go in there, try and do those type of compliance work?
Okay. I'll come back to that.
Go on, mate. You, black shirt. You, the one in looking around.
With regards to employer compliance, it might be happening there, but it's also actually now happening in DMV where AOs and AAs are actually doing large money cases and complex cases, doing work that a few years back only banks could touch. You know, a few years back when I joined revenue, if an AO or AA touched one of those cases, it was like, oh, you're not authorised to touch that, that's beyond your grade. Now it seems like, oh, you know, we haven't got enough bandies, so you can do it. And with regards to what Shankar just said, if more AOs actually, if you want to do large money cases or complex cases, you need to be promoted to do that. I don't think any AOs should actually literally volunteer, because management are actually taking advantage where, you know, a lot of AOs are skilled enough to do banding work, so they think, yeah, let's put them in to do the work cheap.
I was going to say, I mean, as a manager of AAs and AOs, one of the big problems is that there's been nothing in terms of promotion opportunity over many, many years, and there's a lot of very, very capable AAs. And I think somehow we've got to get that message over, because the local compliance promotion opportunities will sort of keep be aimed at higher grades. So I feel that, I mean, one of the solutions to this is, well, if people are going to do the job, they should have the opportunity to be promoted to the job.
Dave?
So I'm going to have a boogie. That's not my reference. In D&B we've actually had this will surprise anyone that doesn't already know. It might fall off your chairs. 2 AAs have recently been promoted to AA. It's staggering. Yeah. But so it does happen. But I just wanted to point out this working up thing is one of the problems with Paysetter. I didn't anticipate when it came in. As much as wrong with Paysetter, but the working up thing. They're getting AOs used to working up to O grade through running the board meetings and the hubs and that sort of stuff. It's just one of the many insidious things with Paysetter that I personally didn't anticipate being an issue. But I just sort of mentioned that as a connection.
Okay, we better wind it up. Anyone against? Right, okay, we'll go straight.
Okay. And I will incorporate reference to the AOs. Yeah. You happy with that memo? I'll add in AAs and AO grade.
I would give you wide to the department more generous.
Okay, yeah.
The thing is, at the moment, the specific evidence is really strong for those
That's the reason why this motion is specific on local compliance. I mean, one of the things we could do, separate from the motion, that if we got evidence of out of grade working, clear evidence it happening anywhere within the branch, if you let the BEC rep, your BEC rep know, we can take that specifically. Because that's one of the things that, you know, but I'll come into a later motion why that's important.
Okay, you happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go straight to a vote. Everybody happy? Sorry, all those in favour? Lovely. Against? Abstentions? That's carried. I'm going to be up here again for the next motion.
Yeah, number 6.
Number 6. Again, Hector, and this is HMRC Employee Relations.
Right, this is very, very quick, this one. Basically, those that have been around a while in the service may remember the concept of Whitley. And basically what Whitley was, basically you had scheduled meetings between the trade union side and management, and where you discuss issues, and the minutes of those meetings are published, so members can see that. Reality, that's gone out the window for large state and HMRC, but those meetings are still taking place. I mean, you know, do any of you people, for example, local compliance here? There is an LTOS that covers local compliance in London, and they have regular meetings with the senior managers, people like, you know, Gail Philby, for example. And those meetings do take place. They do discuss stuff on our behalf, supposedly. But do we actually get to see the minutes of those meetings and this think what's going on? No. We don't think so. We want this motion on there to remind the executive that when you're representing the union members with senior manager at meetings, you have to come back and report back what you've been discussing. So that's what this motion's about.
Okay, anyone want to speak against the motion? Sorry, seconded? Lovely, thank you. Anyone want to speak against it? Okay, I'll go straight to a vote. All those in favour? Lovely. All those against? No. Any abstentions? Lovely, carried.
Alright, thank you so much, Joe, for that. Okay, move swiftly on. Where's Dave? Oh, Dave's here. Okay, motion number 7. Political use of the intranet. Another subject dear to your heart, Mr. Plummer. Okay, the floor's yours.
I'm shooting myself in the foot a little bit by doing this, because the intranet is a fantastic source of material for the branch website, because you'll get some high-ranking person popping up and posting something that's tissue of lies and fabrications, or at least misleading. And you can take it apart, sentence by sentence. And as I say, it's great source material for our website, because it writes itself. You see, that's wrong, this is right, if I send it back and packed up, which they never do. So, with that caveat, I do get increasingly frustrated when you read an article on the internet, and you know, either as a rep or just because you read the papers and what they're telling you really good stuff, you know that it's wrong, you know that it's misleading, you know they're trying to talk people out of taking industrial action by lying to them. We, as a union, don't like to ask you to take industrial action. We don't have to, we've got the facts on our side. They have to lie because they haven't. They're recounting government rhetoric and dressing it up as something that's relevant, and it isn't. And ultimately, you lose faith and you lose confidence in the entire management structure within the customers. Because the people at the top have got so little respect for us that they think we're going to swallow the nonsense that they put up there on the internet. How can you trust them? Right, so they're weakening their own hand by doing it. This is another reason why I should probably oppose it, but there you go. You can see in the motion there's a list of things that went up that were just piffle, frankly. In a couple of cases, ECS managed to get responses out, which was good. We got responses out. One of our responses was nicked using a members brief. So, yeah, it's basically asking PCS to have a word with every customer, say, "Oi, stop. but on the occasions where revenue customs still do it, to have a little team set up so that if something pops up which is blatantly untrue and blatantly misleading, we can produce a response to issue it, get our members on the same day, possibly, certainly within 24 hours. Where we've got the facts to hand, we've got a very, very good research department, so we've got the facts to hand. This is the case, if something pops up, you play the figures, get out to members and say, actually, that's wrong, this is why, we can back it up, they can't.
Okay, thanks very much, Dave. Seconder for the motion? Yep, Andy? Okay, thanks for that. Motion open for debate. Any opposition?
Yeah.
Do you want to say something, sorry?
Well, I was just going to say, I can't say as I've actually read any of these. I looked
You're
at
far
them,
too busy.
recognised them for what they were.
Yeah, you're far too busy, yeah, far too busy. And Mr. Thomas not far too busy. I'll withdraw that, I'll withdraw that. I'll withdraw that.
Edit that bit, Dave.
It's going to be insurrection.
Okay, motions open, okay, sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, I feel strongly when there's an announcement against the union about strike action. And I feel that if they bring that debate onto the internet, then the union should be allowed to reply on the internet. That's common sense, isn't it?
We have argued that, not got very far. we have argued that. We have tried that. Trust me on that one. Sorry.
I think this could be the wrong time to actually pick this particular fight. Although I sympathise with your point of view and I agree with you and it irritates me greatly, I just think they'll clamp down harder on union facilities time, union use of things. I just think you shouldn't go there. This is just not the time to do this particular motion.
Okay.
Just my point of view.
I think that's opposition. That is opposition. I think it is. One day, right reply.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's hard to oppose. We have to have genuine debate.
Yeah, I do take your point. To be honest, I don't think even if it gets to conference, I don't think it'll go very far. It's one of those motions. Just to raise the point as much as anything. And the thing is, the more important part of this is about getting the PCS responses out in good time. I don't think we're ever going to stop the internet being used by the government to try and brainwash us. That's not going to happen. But if we can, there's an instruction in here to get PCS to respond to this stuff within 24 hours. That's the important bit, so we can get information out to members and say, as I say, so we can point out where they're wrong.
I'm suggesting that you amend the motion just to concentrate on that and just acknowledge and say that there is increasing political use of internal staff and that PCS should pay a greater priority to producing a quick response to that rather than the motion is put.
Well, to be honest, it doesn't really. It's a while since I wrote this, actually. It doesn't.
Well, the instructions, sorry,
Yeah.
I mean, the instructions are saying basically issue a statement explaining to members that information internet is not always accurate, and then go on and say that where issue responses, basically. Yeah.
It's not actually calling on Revenue and Customs
to stop what they're doing, because we're not done, are they?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's just us letting members know that it's not always accurate and correcting stuff when it's wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
To be honest, actually, it's a while since I wrote this.
Right then. Okay. Should we move to the vote? Any? All those in favour? Yeah. Any against? Okay. One against. To note that. Any abstentions? Yeah. One abstention as well. Okay. Thank you for that. That concludes the motions for the Revenue and Customs Group Conference. We now move swiftly on to motions for the National Conference.